Backstage, inside an old wooden box filled with scripts from decades past, Robin Williams found something he wasn't looking for. His hands trembled as he unfolded the yellowed paper hidden between the pages of a 1987 screenplay. When he started reading, the words hit him like a freight train. The show was supposed to start in 15 minutes. 2,000 people were waiting in the theater. His manager knocked on the door twice, asking if everything was okay. Robin didn't answer. He couldn't. Because what he held in his hands wasn't just a letter. It was a message from a past he tried to bury, from a person he thought he'd never hear from again. That night's performance would become legendary. Not because of the jokes. Not because of the impersonations. But because Robin Williams, the man who made millions laugh, would do something no one expected. He would stop performing. He would drop the mask. And he would show the world the weight he'd been carrying for 20 years. But before we understand why this letter shattered him, we need to go back to where it all began. If you want to see what happened when Robin read that letter on stage, subscribe now. Because the most powerful moment of his life is still ahead. The year was 1987. Robin Williams was at the peak of his career. Good Morning, Vietnam had just been released, Dead Poets Society was in production, and his stand-up shows were selling out within hours. He was everywhere. On screens, on stages, in magazines. The world knew him as the comedian who never stopped moving, never stopped talking, never stopped making people smile. But behind the manic energy and rapid-fire impressions, there was something else. A quietness. A heaviness that only showed up in fleeting moments, when the cameras stopped rolling and the audience went home. During the filming of Dead Poets Society, Robin spent weeks in a small Vermont town. Between takes, he would walk alone through the woods surrounding the campus location. The crew noticed he carried a notebook everywhere, scribbling thoughts and observations when no one was watching. One afternoon, a young production assistant named Sarah approached him during a break. She'd been working in film for only 6 months, and meeting Robin Williams felt surreal. But what she noticed wasn't the celebrity. It was the sadness in his eyes when he thought no one was looking. "Mr. Williams," she said hesitantly, "I just wanted to say thank you. Your work means a lot to people." Robin smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Thank you? That's kind of you to say." There was a pause. Sarah almost walked away, but something made her stay. "Can I ask you something? How do you do it? Make everyone laugh even when things aren't funny?" The question caught him off guard. For a moment, the performance stopped. Robin looked at her, really looked at her, and said something he rarely admitted out loud. "Because sometimes making others laugh is the only thing that makes sense. It's easier to be funny than to be real." Sarah never forgot those words. She didn't know it then, but years later, she would write him a letter about that conversation. A letter that would sit hidden in a script for 2 decades before Robin would finally find it. But that day in Vermont wasn't just about a conversation. It was the beginning of something Robin couldn't control. A pattern of giving everything to everyone else while slowly losing himself. The filming of Dead Poets Society was emotionally exhausting. Robin poured himself into the role of John Keating, the unconventional teacher who inspired his students to seize the day and live authentically. The irony wasn't lost on him. He was playing a character who encouraged others to embrace their true selves while he hid behind layers of personas and characters. One scene required him to stand on a desk and recite poetry to his students. When the cameras rolled, something unexpected happened. Robin's voice cracked. Not because of the script, but because the words hit too close to home. "We don't read and write poetry because it's cute," his character said. "We read and write poetry because we are members of the human race. And the human race is filled with passion." Director Peter Weir called cut, but Robin stayed on that desk, staring out the window, tears streaming down his face. The crew stood in silence, unsure whether to approach him or give him space. Finally, Robin climbed down, wiped his eyes, and flashed that familiar smile. "Sorry, folks. Got a little lost there." Everyone laughed nervously, and they moved on to the next scene. But Sarah, watching from behind the monitors, saw what others missed. Robin wasn't acting anymore. For just a moment, he'd let something real slip through. After that day, she wanted to reach out to him again. To tell him that vulnerability wasn't weakness. That being real didn't make him less lovable. But she was just a production assistant. Who was she to give advice to Robin Williams? So instead, she wrote a letter. She wrote about what she saw that day on set. About the weight he seemed to carry. About how his laughter felt like both a gift and a shield. She wrote about her own struggles with depression, how watching him perform made her feel less alone, and how she hoped he knew that his honesty, even in small glimpses, mattered more than any joke ever could. When filming wrapped, Sarah sealed the letter and slipped it into one of Robin's old scripts from the production office. She didn't give it to him directly. She was too nervous. Instead, she tucked it between the pages of a discarded draft, hoping somehow, someday, he might find it. But Robin never saw that script again. It was packed away with hundreds of others, stored in boxes that would sit untouched in a warehouse for years. 20 years passed. Robin's career continued to soar. He starred in beloved films like Mrs. Doubtfire, Good Will Hunting, and Patch Adams. He won an Oscar. He became a father. He went through divorces, battled addiction, and quietly fought demons he never spoke about publicly. Through it all, he kept performing. Kept making people laugh. Kept giving everything he had to everyone else. By 2007, Robin had slowed down. The manic energy that once defined him had softened. He still performed, but something had shifted. He was more reflective, more willing to talk about the darkness alongside the light. That year, he was preparing for a one-man show, a retrospective of his career. His team brought boxes of old scripts, costumes, and memorabilia from storage so he could use them as inspiration. Robin spent days sifting through the artifacts of his past, rediscovering moments he'd forgotten. And that's when he found the letter. It was tucked inside a worn copy of the Dead Poets Society script, yellowed with age, the handwriting slightly faded but still legible. Robin didn't recognize the name at first. Sarah Mitchell. The name didn't ring a bell. But as he started reading, the memories came flooding back. She wrote about that conversation in Vermont. About the scene on the desk. About seeing him cry when he thought no one was watching. She wrote about her own pain, her own battles with feeling unseen and unheard. And then she wrote something that broke him. Mr. Williams, I hope you know that your sadness doesn't make you less. It makes you human. And your humanity is what we love most about you. Not the characters. Not the jokes. You. The real you. I hope someday you let yourself be seen the way we see you. Robin sat on the floor of his dressing room, the letter trembling in his hands. 20 years. This letter had been waiting for him for 20 years. And he'd never known. For the first time in decades, Robin Williams allowed himself to feel the full weight of what he'd been carrying. The exhaustion of always being on. The loneliness of hiding behind humor. The fear that if people saw the real him, they wouldn't love him anymore. Tears streamed down his face, and he didn't try to stop them. His manager knocked on the door. Robin, 5 minutes. You ready? Robin wiped his eyes, folded the letter carefully, and stood up. Yeah, he said quietly. I'm ready. But when he walked onto that stage 15 minutes later, something was different. The audience erupted in applause as Robin stepped into the spotlight. They expected the usual, rapid-fire impressions, self-deprecating jokes, and manic energy. But Robin didn't start with a joke. He stood there, holding the letter in his hand, and looked out at the sea of faces. I found something today, he said, his voice softer than usual. A letter. From someone I met 20 years ago. And I think I need to share it with you. The audience went silent. This wasn't part of the show. Robin unfolded the letter and began to read. Not dramatically. Not performatively. Just honestly. He read Sarah's words about vulnerability, about pain, about the weight of always trying to make others happy while feeling invisible yourself. When he finished, he looked up. Tears were streaming down his face, but he wasn't hiding them. For most of my life, he said, I've been terrified of being real. Because I thought if people saw who I really was, they'd stop loving me. But this letter, it's been waiting for me for 20 years. And I think it's time I stopped running. The theater was dead silent. 2,000 people sat frozen, not sure what they were witnessing. And then, slowly, one person started clapping. Then another. And another. Within seconds, the entire audience was on their feet, tears in their own eyes, applauding not for the performer, but for the man. Robin stood there, overwhelmed, letting the moment wash over him. For the first time in his life, he wasn't hiding. He was just Robin. And the audience loved him more for it. After the show, Robin asked his team to find Sarah Mitchell. It took weeks, but they tracked her down. She was living in Oregon, working as a therapist, helping others navigate their own struggles with mental health. When Robin called her, she couldn't believe it. You found the letter, she said, her voice shaking. I did, Robin replied. And I need to thank you. You gave me something I didn't know I needed. Permission to be human. They talked for hours. About life, about pain, about the masks we wear and the courage it takes to remove them. Sarah told him how much his honesty that night on stage had meant to people. How it gave others permission to be vulnerable too. Robin's show became a turning point. He continued performing, but with a different energy. Less frantic. More grounded. He started talking openly about depression, about the weight of fame, about the importance of being real even when it's terrifying. That letter didn't fix everything. Robin still struggled. He still faced dark days. But it reminded him of something he'd forgotten, that his humanity, his vulnerability, his realness, was his greatest gift. Not his jokes. Not his characters. Him. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so more stories like this reach the people who need them most. Because Robin's message, the one he carried in that letter, is something we all need to remember. It's okay to be real. It's okay to be seen. And your humanity is enough. Years later, when reflecting on that night, Robin said in an interview, "That letter saved me. Not from anything dramatic, but from myself. From the idea that I had to be perfect to be loved. We spend so much time performing for others that we forget the most radical thing we can do is just be ourselves." Sarah's letter became a symbol for Robin, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, someone sees us. Someone understands. And sometimes, the words we need most are the ones that have been waiting for us all along. In the months following that performance, Robin began keeping the letter with him. He'd read it before shows, before interviews, whenever he felt the old patterns returning. The urge to hide behind the mask, to be anything but himself. The letter became his anchor, reminding him that vulnerability wasn't weakness, that being seen was a gift, not a burden. He started talking more openly in interviews about his struggles. Not for sympathy, but to let others know they weren't alone. Fans began writing to him, sharing their own stories of pain and healing. Many said that seeing Robin be real gave them permission to do the same. The comedian who had spent decades making people laugh was now making them feel less alone in their darkness. Sarah attended several of his later performances. Each time, Robin would spot her in the audience and give a small nod, a silent thank you for the gift she'd given him all those years ago. After one show, she told him, "You know what the beautiful thing is? That letter was as much for me as it was for you. Writing it helped me realize I wasn't alone either." Robin smiled, this time the smile reaching his eyes. Maybe that's the point of all of this. We're all just trying to tell each other we're not alone. Robin Williams never stopped making people laugh. But after that night, he also started making people feel. And in the end, that's what mattered most. His legacy wasn't just the characters he played or the jokes he told. It was the reminder that our humanity, our vulnerability, our realness, is what connects us all.